Alrighty. Try something a little different this time around, guys.
Hello.
Oh, try something different. Hello, everyone. Wait here. Go to project. I'm gonna try something fancy today. Not. Oh no, not fine. Well, not. Ah, yeah, it's working. All right. I think that's good. I think that's good. Gotta make a new boundary. This thing you do it. Oh my god, my legs are killing me from squatting down now. Create new boundary. Yes. You're running for heavy right now. Gotta turn this stuff down. Oh my god, the difference of that already. Alright, that should be fine. I'm gonna pull up separate menu on my end. That way I can see everybody's beautiful messages. If anybody does have some questions they'd like to get started and leaving us, you can drop your questions either in the YouTube chat or you can drop them in the Discord. Advisor Jocab will be helping me in getting everybody's questions answered today. Hopefully we can get everything answered. If not, there'll always be another Q&A, but more likely we should have more than plenty of time to get everybody's questions answered today. Alright, we're good. Maybe throw in some possibly. Very fun backers. Alright. And one final thing, because I know Discord was iffy this last time on if not actually sending out announcements. Whatever reason. Makes sense. Up to start question. Starting project. Option. Love to hear your thoughts. Alright, without further ado, actual song. Okay, how are you today?
Pretty good.
Pretty good, pretty good. To hear it. Alright. Just want to give a preface for everybody in here. This is the first time me trying this. I want to try something special for the end of the year, so if this all works out, which seems like it is, which I'm very thankful for, it'll be very cool. Alright, so.
On Discord we have 0 problems. The stream seemed to be having incredible lag.
The streams are having incredible lag?
Yes.
Okay. Wonder if that's because I have it set to low latency. Lagging hard. Up. Sorry. Alright, hopefully that just up. Unless it doesn't. Not yet. So even if the YouTube stream breaks again just because of this, still my fault, but we'll have the recording separated so we can have the audio spliced and not be as messed up.
Alright, the YouTube stream is smooth now.
YouTube's finally smooth now?
Yes.
Alright, amazing. And so alright, actually perfect now. Holy. Alright, I do apologize everybody for the little bit of troubleshooting. We are good now though. I am Neily, director of the Recoded Project, and joining me here today we have some very amazing guests. Starting at the bottom left we got Jocab. Right next to Jocab we have Afterlife, our back-end developer in the coding department. And on the right I have founder Kaz, or Sneeko, the original founder in helping everything you see here today become a reality. So thank you everybody for taking your time out today to come answer some questions with the community. And without further ado, let's get started. Bear, what would be the first question for today?
First question. I also can't seem to see the YouTube chat, fortunately. From first question from Zero. When the time comes, will you be releasing units in batches like the original, or you have a different plan?
Yes, we will be releasing units in the batches as before, so the original timeline will be kept how it was before. So we'll be starting with 3 stars and 4 stars at the very beginning, of course, because that was where we were at in 2013. And then as we move further along down the timeline of Brave Frontier, we'll slowly start to incorporate more units, that being 5-star, 6-star, 7-star, and then eventually Omni Evolution. As to when all those will come into play is going to be something that will have to be decided during our developments, but it is on our roadmap for the entirety of Recoded.
And next question from the 9th, Ermit Leston. Is there any plans for Vortex units like Say? And if there would be changes, I assume, to evolve from the Vortex units into Omnis, instead of them being 2 separate evolution lines?
It's a very good question. Something that we get asked quite a lot. I don't think...
Your camera's rotating?
I love finger tracking. So great. It is something that we plan on doing once this friggin' camera gets back into place. There we go. Jeez. Gotta be careful with how I connect my fingers. So, yes. It is something that we do plan on doing at some point. I just completely blanked out. What was the question again? I'm so lost.
Are there any plans for Vortex units?
Vortex, yes. Yes, so we are going to do Vortex. I knew it was something about units, I just blanked out for a second. So the main thing that everybody brings up when talking about Vortex units primarily is the battle means, for example. Vanilla, Saren, all the same batch. Problem is with those units is that they all started out as a 3-star hero, eventually capping out at 6 stars in their Vortex versions. Once we eventually got into the 7-star and Omni era, Gumi and Lin decided it was a good idea to re-release those units in a much bigger power scaling for 7-star and Omni. It's not entirely off the table just yet, but that is something that we have to consider when making a choice like that. Is if we do decide to go through with that, that would mean that either the 3 to 6-star variants would have to be buffed up a little bit just to make that linear growth progression a little bit more seamless, or the alternative, which is more likely to happen, we would nerf the 7-star and Omni versions of the battle means. That way, they're not as high of a power scaling as the rest of their peers in that sense, because it would be a little bit off for a 6-star unit in that 2015 era. Or sorry, we'll use 7-star, that'd be a better example. It'd be off for a 7-star of the 2015-2016 era to have the same power scaling as a late stage unit that came out in, let's say, 2021, 2022. So those would be the few steps that we would have to tweak and balance, go back and forth, listen to the community's feedback, figure out what is going to be the best approach, what would be the best balance changes, and of course, hearing everybody's feedback on what changes are good to go or what things need more tweaking, whether that's buffing a unit stat, nerfing an ability, or anything else of that factor. So it is something we're discussing, something that we're thinking about. There's nothing confirmed at this moment.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Kaz.
now see YouTube comments.
Awesome.
So just letting you know.
Love to hear it. Awesome. Welcome in everybody from YouTube. Sorry, go ahead, Kaz.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good.
I was wanting to add to what you were just speaking about, the power imbalance between those characters.
Yes.
And obviously this would be something we would discuss when we get to that point. But as far as I can remember, I do remember the Battle Maidens and some other Vortex characters that have had some unique summonable characters versions of them. Their designs from their Vortex characters and their Summoner characters were very distinctly different from each other, like especially the art style.
Mm-hmm.
So I always imagined, because I know like the one, what was her name? Bailey, the cat girl.
Yes.
Her summonable version has an entirely different design compared to the one that you get from her Vortex quest.
Mm-hmm.
So I always imagined maybe just keeping them separate, because it sort of feels like it's an entirely different character, and I feel like the evolution... How do I put this? I always thought about giving the Vortex versions of them their own 6 and Omni that match that character's design, because I feel like it's kind of a weird... Sorry, I can't word that very well.
The design's too distinctly different. Match.
Yeah, and I always thought about giving them their own Omni line and keeping these summonal versions their own exclusive versions. Maybe treating them as sort of like I believe they call them, just like an alternative version.
Yeah, and that's definitely something we can do too, since we did talk about this in a previous update with having a rarity reduction for all the previous units. So that is very plausible that we do take all the 7-star Battle Maidens and we go through the flare reduction to where it's just the character itself, and then that in turn could be the 6-star. But again, as you guys are hearing, these are the debates that we need to have with each other on the team to figure out what would be the best approach, and then ultimately ask you, the community, do you feel like this is the best approach? So it's all on the table for right now. There's a couple tables behind me, so trust me, there's more than enough room to have a lot of discussions like this.
I'm just letting you know, Afterlife, I see the YouTube chat. There's no need to post them back in the Discord. I can see them now. So we are all good.
Are you able to invite Afterlife as a speaker? You should have permission already.
Maybe.
There.
'Cause
Val just invited me.
All right.
Buddy.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Afterlife. So just a reminder for everybody, Afterlife is our back-end coding developer for the Recoded project. He is the one primarily handling things such as your account data and making sure that unit data entries are all cataloged correctly, making sure that everybody's accounts is authenticated, making sure that nobody gets hacked, nobody's cheating, nobody's doing any sneaky stuff that we don't want. So thank you again, Afterlife, for everything you got going on. And do you have anything that you could share with the community as far as what's to come in the future?
There'll be a lot of things. I'll just chime in every now and then whenever a question gives me the opportunity to speak a bit further about backend stuff and future plans and things that I see as a vision already. So I'll just chime in every now and then.
Sounds good. All right, Mr. Bear.
Next question. Next question from Archangel Phoenix. Quick question. Will there be additional areas in the Imperial capital, Randall? And if so, what will these areas offer?
Additional areas, huh? Probably not anything at the moment. It more or less so will probably just stick to the same things that we've had before, where you can go to the Imperial capital. You'll be able to do your trials and test dungeons against like Carl and Grons. You'll have your Brave Frontier library, of course, where you can go read all of the unit lore and data, see all of the sprites, all of the unit art styles. Same thing with the merit shop. Be able to go get your dailies, your weeklies, your monthlies, exchange your merits for more things like fusion or evolution, spheres, items perhaps. And of course, raid items will eventually be coming into play as we get further along down the line. It won't be something that is present in the launch of the game, of course, because we have to take online functionality and player versus player, player versus everyone lobbies, like Raid, for example, having a room of 4 people all connected into a seamless experience. Will take a lot, but ultimately it's something we're going to be looking forward to. As far as adding more content in the future for it, that's something that's too far to decide at the moment, so it would probably be something that if we did ever discuss as a topic, it would be way further on. Probably even past post-launch, like maybe thinking about like version 1.5 or like 2.0 of Recoded. It's too far out to think of what could possibly be at this time.
All right, next question is from both a sun emoji, like the name is a sun emoji, and Cupid VT on YouTube. First question is, do you plan on having playtesters, and at the same time, will content creators receive a key for the open beta?
Yes, content creators will be receiving a key for the beta. That is something that we primarily would like to have as a dedicated team going into the future. So if you are not already applied, you can go onto the Brave Frontier Recoded website and apply for the Stream Team. Stream Team does not specifically mean that you have to be a live streamer, but doing that on Twitch or YouTube. I just called it the Stream Team just to kind of summarize that whole category as a whole. So if you are a YouTube content creator, if you were a Twitch or YouTube live streamer, or even TikTok, any shorts, stuff like that, right? We will definitely have a program open to where we can get those creators included and possibly even feature a creator code if said creators are able to bring in a big enough of a player base or have a bit of a presence inside the community. So for an example of that, we'll use Kaz here as an example. So if you were to follow Kaz and you were to go into the settings and then you type in creator code, you would type in Kaz or Sneeko, whichever code they decide, and then you'll be given a chest. That chest would contain a couple things, primarily some Zell, some Karma, maybe a gem or 2, possibly a summon ticket. Have to say.
Our next question is from Aldo Melano on YouTube. Will there be an original content for BF Recoded?
Yes. Kaz, would you actually like to give the answer for this one?
Sure. So, let's see. I believe the plans for original content. Did we have any plans for anything on release?
We
As
do
far as I'm
have
aware.
We have 2 releases scheduled for next year, for Valentine's Day and for St. Patrick's Day.
Mm-hmm. So we have 2 units that are we've spoken about. Yeah, I can already see the chat. Shamrocky and what's the other one called? Is it Lovey?
Lovey.
Is that its name? Yes, Lovey. Yes, 2 funny slimes that I know we've been talking about for over a year now. I think we've been speaking about these characters.
It has been a little while.
They are ready. We want to release them, let people have fun with them. You know, just some fun additions to get people more involved with the community. And regarding some other original content, I know we spoke about this in the last Q&A, me and Neily. So this maybe might go off a little bit. Regarding collaboration characters, we spoke about how we can't, we can't use collaboration characters because we don't own the IP or the rights to these things. We don't even own the IP or the rights to Brave Frontier. So of course we can't use these collaborations like My Hero Academia, Trigun, stuff like that. So, and I believe we do have a section on the website for people to post their original characters, correct?
We do have a application where players can send in their art portfolios, and with that portfolio you can of course include your custom character. We do have a custom template inside of the Discord server. That way you can actually go through and make your personal unit index, which will make it much easier for us on the development team to be able to go through all of the possible recoded units that the community wants and find which one would be not only the best fit in terms of the art style, but also best fit in terms of the gameplay as well.
Yeah, it's killing 2 birds with stone. We're able to get over the problem of having these content drops where we can't put the collaboration characters in when they were the main focus of the game for a while, and it's a way to get the community involved by getting some of our fans' characters into the game. And all in around, it fixes a lot of problems while allowing us to be active with the community and to just have fun with our own custom characters.
And to add on to that too, there is a bountiful amount of creativity in the community already. We have reached out to a few of previous custom hero creators that were part of Brave Frontier back in the earlier days, 2013 through 2016. If anybody is familiar with the name Chaxalos, we have reached out to them and have gotten confirmation that we may be able to have some of, if not all of their personal creations inside of Recode. We don't know when or what time frame we would introduce them, but just to go more on the factor of, do we want to have custom characters? Is there going to be Recode exclusives? We have infinite potential for having Recode exclusive characters. And, as Kaz already mentioned, we do have 2 on the way. 2 on the way. So, come 2026, you all be introduced to the first 2 Recode exclusives, being Shamrocky and Lovey, and I'm personally super excited for everybody to meet them because, oh my god, they're so adorable. So adorable. Can't wait. Super excited.
Right, we have a question here from Archangel Phoenix that is actually answered in the FAQ. So if you haven't read the FAQ, definitely go read that on the website. The question is, when the game launches, will it be available only on PC or will it be also available on mobile devices? The gist of it is, if you have a browser, the game will run on that. Even if it's on PC, if it's on mobile. If you have a browser, an internet browser on your platform, the game will run on that platform. It is a browser-based game. It will not be an application, but it will be a browser-based game. So as long as you have an internet connection and an access to a browser, an internet browser, you will be able to play Recoded.
And
so
I know,
next question.
Just for funnies real quick, because I know everybody keeps asking, it's something that gets asked all the time when we say, is it going to be available to play on this or that? We're not doing a 3DS port. It's not happening. Stop asking for it.
You got a question about that? From Mayday? Is the 3DS port going to have a physical release?
No 3DS port. It's not happening. No 3DS port. If you guys want to do a 3DS port, you could do that once we open the source code up. But as far as what the Recode team is doing, we are not focusing on a 3DS port. It's not happening.
Somebody can put Firefox on a 3DS, you can run Recoded.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah,
Or browser.
the community will figure it out. You guys are all smart enough. Look at how far we've come already. Everybody's in the community is absolute geniuses. I have no doubt that once the code's available, you guys will be fine. You'll be fine. You'll figure it out.
The next question is from Endosoul. In the unit's skills descriptions, will all of the percentages or numbers be shown directly instead of using keywords such as considerably, greatly, enormously, etc.?
Ooh. Somebody's jumping a couple updates ahead. Guys, you want to give the answer for that?
Sure. So, we spoke on it a little in the last Q&A. A lot of this has to do with the rebalancing we're doing, especially with the recovery rebalance. And one of the main topics regarding this is spheres, which we will be speaking on in a few... We haven't decided when we'll be speaking on that, correct?
No date
we
yet,
spoke a little.
but it will likely be something 2026 as well, if not 2027.
And some spheres, especially earlier game ones, will be getting reworked, and especially the text involving them and other skills, because there are so many spheres that just say, this stat is boosted by a great amount, a large amount, a small amount, and there's no way to know exactly how much that amount is. So we will be going back through and making it to where people will see exactly what they are getting from spears, skills, brave burst buffs, and all of that, so that people aren't having to sit there and calculate just how much their stat is being increased by all of these different aspects they have in their character, not knowing if something they're doing is wrong or if something they're doing is useless. All in all, just the information will be there and it won't be hidden away from you.
I'm not sure what we would call the update, but something along the lines of transparency. So, again, that's something that me and Kaz are actively working on right now, alongside getting the recovery reduction sheet out for the community come 2026. So, more than likely, we'll talk about that as an update and go through all the details of those changes in 2026, and then come 2027, we will have that document that we're working on available to the public. That way you guys can also go through and give your own personal critiques and feedback to us for any future changes before we push everything out into the live servers.
Also, to add on to that, theoretically, we can go even further than just spheres and other things, like effects like greater to concrete numbers. We can even give out tooltips to different characters to get more info about the hit count, the PC count, etc. of like certain units and their BBs and that stuff.
And that's going to be very, very important for when we do go through and discuss about... Jesus, I hate finger tracking controls. But yes, that will be more important for when we discuss things like making balance changes for when we get into later stages like 7-star and Omni, because as we all know, the power scaling for that is through the roof. Through the roof. Omni potential is insane. So it's definitely going to be something that we have to take into account, see how players are using certain units, where they're using certain units, and making those adjustments accordingly to where, as before, we're not having all of our previous heroes, like the 6 heroes, for example, being kind of shut out by the rest of the cast, even though they're our main cast in that sense, right? So we want to give the 6 heroes a little bit more love. We want to give all the legacy Omni units a lot more attention. So there will definitely be a lot more to come regarding that. Oh man, I hate finger tracking controls. Alright, Jocab, next question while I figure out how to reposition myself.
Next question is from Eosti. What are your biggest obstacles that slow down the process the most?
Biggest obstacles? I think the biggest obstacle right now really is just finding reliable coders. That's probably the most tedious bit of it, and just finding reliable team members and staff as well. We did have a German team dedicated to localization a while ago, that we unfortunately had to drop for the short time being due to just lack of participants, lack of engagement with those members. When it comes to the actual development side of things, it really just comes down to, again, finding coders that are adept enough to be able to work alongside all of our other coders, like Afterlife, Blue Arc, and so on. As we get further down the line, as we get more simplified in our developments to where we can introduce more novice coders, our development rate will accelerate, because at that point it will just be a matter of coding in the dungeons and placing units where they need to go, since we already have that foundation set in stone, which is essentially what we've been working on since we started the project, is getting that foundation started. And as we've discussed earlier this year, that we were going through a refactoring of our code, that way it's going to be easier to facilitate new coders, and you guys will be introducing yourselves to those new coders come the end of this year, where you'll be meeting some of our new coders to the team, FaZe and Royals. And they have been doing a fantastic job on getting us all prepared for when we're actually ready to talk about our next update, playtest possibilities.
Next question is from Saiyan Zeno. I'm not sure if it falls into the collaboration units category, but question for third arc. Are you going to add collaboration weapons for Summoner?
We will not be doing collaborations for a Summoner, no. I know a lot of people are familiar with the Junkyard Dog, for example, which was, I believe, Guilty Gear. I think that was the correct collaboration for that. Same thing would apply. We wouldn't be able to have the Junkyard Dog because it's not entirely owned by Brave Frontier. It is a third-party asset. So even though it is just a weapon and not exactly a character, they are still in ownership of that asset. So therefore, we cannot use that without being possibly legally in trouble. As small as it may seem, we want to try to minimize as much risk as possible, to where even if there is some sort of legal repercussions, we, the team, still own the code for Recoded. However, we don't own the assets, which is a big difference. So as long as we don't get in trouble on the assets side with Gumi alone, then we don't have to worry about tripping on anybody else's toes, like the owners of Guilty Gear, or my favorite example, Disney, because they have a Star Wars collab in Japan, and if any of you know Disney, they're essentially the Nintendo of the movie industry. So definitely don't want to do anything like that. As far as having custom content, something maybe to replace the Junkyard Dog, not entirely off the table, but not something we're discussing yet either, because again, third arc is so far away that before we even think about discussing third arc, we want to make sure that all of Mistral is complete first. And most likely all of Ishbria as well, all of the Underworld.
We've got 3 questions, all pretty much the same. One from the Kid Tay on YouTube, one from AJVP, one from C Code. Have you addressed the gem situation if you can't do microtransactions? I think it has been explained already, but how will you handle gems if you can't put a store for them, since you can't make money out of it, if I reckon correctly? Will there be some sort of mission tab or something? Will there be where these will be redeemable? How are you handling the economy with gems? Will players receive gems from levels or by doing common quests/trails, since purchases will no longer be possible?
It's a great question. This is something that we have gone over a couple times in our FAQ and just through our community Q&As and stuff like that, but I'm always happy to re-answer this question because I know it's something that everybody is extremely nervous about when we are talking about entering into a new entirely free-to-play era. So, to get started with that, just as we were before, we had all the original things in Brave Frontier to start with. Primarily, we had, when you finish a quest for the first time, you get a gem. When you do your daily login campaigns, you get a gem. Do your Vortex quest, you also get a gem. Depending on your achievements in the record hall, you would also get gems or more merit points on that factor. We also plan on having an additional daily login campaign on top of the yearly cycle, which will be every 30 days throughout the entire year. So, as an average player, let's say, somebody that maybe plays Brave Frontier for a couple hours at best a day, maybe throughout the week. If you are a daily login player, you're at minimum guaranteeing yourself 365 gems for the year. Every day you log in, you're getting at least 1 gem. That's not included with your daily login campaign. So, what it could be is you have your 365 from the year, then you have your daily login campaigns, which of course will span across the 12 months. Then on top of that, you have all of your quests, you have the Vortex, you have the Raid, you have Frontier Hunter, which especially that's going to be a big thing for gems, right? Then you have Frontier Gate, you have Grand Quest, Arena, Coliseum possibly, maybe even Challenge Arena. So we're getting, I can't squat down because there's such a big list of how many ways you can obtain gems. So gems will be more than bountiful. I would like to say on a, again going back to like a player's perspective, if you play here and there, maybe you can get somewhere between 150 to 250 gems a year. If you're a more dedicated player and you do your daily logins on throughout the year, 365 to somewhere around maybe 500 to 600 gems, maybe 700 if you're really pushing hard on the story quest content. And then once we get further along into having things like Raid, Frontier Hunter, Arena, Challenge Arena, and all the other accessible ways for that to be obtained, more than likely a advanced player would be able to obtain somewhere between 500 to 1,000 gems a year.
Alright, we got a couple questions that are pretty much the same. One from Broski on YouTube, one from Major Beleza. So, is that game already in the playable state since we are already talking about systems, mechanics, and events? At this point, how far away do you think it would be to have a playable copy of the game?
That is something we'll be discussing in our next update for playtest possibilities. I'll give a short answer on that, but I don't want to go into too much detail because that's going to be the entire update come the end of the year. We do have what you see in our update videos right now is playable. It's not playable in the sense that the community thinks it is, though. So on the dev team, we can boot up the game and play a dungeon on repeat as many times as we want. However, it is the same dungeon. Now, if we want to customize that and make it more unique for us, we would have to go through and change the background manually, change the units manually, typing in all the unit IDs separate and things like that, including all the account data, or not account data, the unit attack data, sorry, and make it more of our own custom dungeon. Details like that is what we're going to be discussing come Update 26 on how we could possibly expand on those possibilities and where those possibilities could take us going into 2026. As far as where we're at right now, the combat scene is relatively just about finished. Right now we're going through some final tweaks to kind of future-proof our developments for when we do start talking about things like Vortex and other event dungeons of that nature. So we want to make sure that all systems are in place to where, just like our cutscene emulator, cutscenes are 100% done, with maybe the exception of like an overlay effect from like the Ishgria arc or third arc content, because it's just not something that we have to have done at this very moment. Story cutscene editor is 100% finished. So that's already a massive milestone in terms of having all of Brave Frontier being recoded. Now is the time for the battle scene, which we're getting very close to. Again, Update 26, we'll be discussing just that. As far as the future content goes, and when we can decide on things like closed alphas, closed betas, things of that nature, that'll all ultimately come down to how the private test demos are received and where we can then look forward to into having next steps of content like the menus, online interactions, whether that's from Arena, Raid, sending out friend requests, and then of course more universal things like the yearly cycle. That way events are constantly on a loop, that way nobody's ever missing content, things like that. So sorry I can't give a massive in-depth answer right now, but I do promise that is coming up very, very shortly. Very, very shortly.
We have a question for God Evil on YouTube. The first part is easily answerable. what's going to happen to collab events and collab units?
Would you like to answer that, Cap? Yep.
This is mentioned in the FAQ. There will not be any collab units, and there will not be any collab events. They will be, if there are if they have to come back, they will be replaced with the original Brave Frontier content, basically. Second, in the same branch, how is the region-specific events and units going to be handled?
That's something that we haven't quite decided on just yet, as far as how we're going to be introducing all those things. We do want to have all of Brave Frontier EU back at some point, as that was a very, very well-received edition of Brave Frontier as a whole. So, like Creator Lexwam, for example, which is the mirror version of Creator Maxwell, and Jakarta, mirror version of Cardace. Eventually, we'd like to have all of them back, especially I believe they're called the Zodiac units, which featured units like Dark Zelnite, for example. We very, very much want to have Dark Zelnite in the game. We absolutely love his design and everything to do with his attack and everything about it. So, we do have all the data for Brave Frontier EU, but the problem with EU is that, just like in Japan and some of the other regions, which the Forgotten Korean server, there is certain content that can't be released on the original timeline of Brave Frontier because of those power imbalances, whether that being from 5-star, 6-star, 7, or up. So we'd like to reintroduce them at some point. As far as when we reintroduce them, though, that's going to have to be decided at a later date.
Alright, next question is from Cross. Was the thought process that eventually led to you guys settling on 90 to 95% for the recovery reduction?
So 90-95%, it kind of just felt like a good value, because when looking at everything Recoded had, looking at everything Brave Frontier had, there was so many ways of healing. I mean, you had your burst healing, you had your heal off a spark, you had your lifesteal just from attacking the unit, you had your healing on guard, you had healing from your hotbar items. There were just so many ways to look at it. So when we were looking at the equations, it came down to 80% was kind of the sweet spot that we think is going to be more so the final percentage that we probably land on, depending on if the 90-95% is too rough. Which again, we don't want the community to feel like that it's a overwhelming challenge and that Brave Frontier is entirely changed as a whole. That's not what we're going for. We just want to make the recovery stat and healing properties more impactful in your squad building decisions. That way, like mentioned in the video from Kaz, every unit will essentially be their own healer, which is something that we saw extremely prominently once we got into the 6-star era of Brave Frontier. As far as how we're going to be changing those values will ultimately depend on, again, the player feedback. So we're going to be testing 90%, 95% right now. Additionally, just before I finish that statement, Oracle as a typing, if any of you are remembering from even the early days until when Omni got introduced, Oracle was always at the bottom of everybody's priority list. So in addition to that, we want to add Oracle as a little bit more of a rival, maybe, to having a Guardian on the team. Whereas the only real use that came out of having an Oracle in the late stage of Brave Frontier was to have an extra Angel idol, which we still think is something that could be plausible once we get to Omni stages, but as far as in the current era of Brave Frontier, 3 to 5-star era, Oracle just kind of gets pushed aside. Nobody really wants to deal with Oracle. Kind of the same thing with Lord, but Lord's kind of the baseline for everything, right? That's where we have to start off at. So make Oracle more impactful, a more resourceful decision, where if you pull an Oracle from the summon gates, you're not like, oh no, why did I get Oracle? Terrible choices. Bad summons. We don't want that to be an issue. And again, 90-95%, it may be a little bit much for right now, but as we do our tests and gain feedback, it may be reduced back down to 85% or potentially even 80%. Right now though, if you go back and watch the recovery reduction, when we were talking specifically about 5-star Fire God Vargas, after you apply all the additional stat boost from getting them to max level, then adding in recovery and fall, they come together to hit 254 points of recovery, which with an HP pool of 4,000 would only cost you about 16 heart crystals, which in the grand scale of Brave Frontier, which we all know, the sparks can fly pretty fast when you have a high hit count. 16 heart crystals for a full health bar doesn't sound terribly unreasonable. And again, we're still not including other key factors too, like having spheres equipped, having an Elgif on the unit for an extra skill, maybe that boosts the recovery even higher, or boosts the effectiveness of heart crystals. And then you have all of your buffs to go with that as well. Boost your recovery for 3 turns. Get healed when you get attacked. Heal when you guard. Heal when you spark. There's so many other ways. So, just as a final note, again, it may seem like it's a massive reduction for right now, but those were all the things that we were taking into account when making that decision, because, again, it's so much. So, if and when we have to make those changes, we know for sure the community will absolutely let us know. And then we will, of course, make the changes according to plan.
Alright, I wanted to ask, do you still want to go for an hour max?
What time are we at right now?
There is
47?
13 minutes left.
We can... We'll see in 10 minutes. We'll see how it goes. Yeah,
I'm
see how many
stop
questions we
taking
have left.
questions for now because I have 13 questions left.
13 questions left? Okay.
Yes. Next question is from Eosti. Of course, this project comes from a love of BF, but if the original creators have you take it down, would you guys be interested in making your own game that's similar?
Yes, that is exactly what we were planning on doing, which is why it may seem a little daunting due to our timeline in our development cycle, as I've seen quite a lot of comments on the Reddit and across other socials. What's taking them so long? I see people doing this in other games. Why can't they do it? Well, there's a bit of a difference with that. In the end user license agreement with Brave Frontier, it is clearly stated, no reverse engineering of their code. Not at all. So, if for whatever reason we do get into legal repercussions with Gumi or Alim, we don't have to worry about that as critically as one may think. We don't own the assets to Brave Frontier. That is true. But we own the code to recode it. We're not reversing the spaghetti code that was left by Gumi and Alim back from 2013, which in turn is going to make our developments on our side much easier because now we're not having to crack a code that's almost 15 years old. On top of that, we don't have to worry about any bugs or errors that we have to try and fix or figure out a workaround, which my favorite example of that was when Hadron came out and Stealth, or if you all remember Rogan with the Guardian Cloak and Stealth Robe, absolutely broke the game for almost 3-4 years. So not having to deal with that as a potential issue is already a massive step forward in terms of what we want Recoded to be, which is a game that will last generations. So my kids will play it, your kids will play it, hell, maybe even your grandkids will be able to play it. We want Recoded to live for the long term, not the short term.
Right, next question is from Dragon Hero. Is recovery reduction bound to change? Did you ever think maybe the recovery was reduced too much to the point where it became an issue?
Again, it's still too early to say whether it's going to be an issue or not. Because the content that we're facing right now doesn't really require you to have mitigation or to have any sort of crazy high healing or recovery stat. Maybe once we get into a later stage boss, like we reach Cardias the Malevolent or Deval the Supreme, again, then we may have to reconsider our recovery nerfs to where we'll roll it back by 5% or 10% to where now the new reduction values are 80 to 85%. But ultimately, we definitely want to have some sort of reduction in there because the whole overhealing was just way too prominent. Not even in the late game stages of Brave Frontier. It was something that came pretty common even in the 6 to 7 star era, depending on the units you had. So, for example, if you had a team of Larios, for example, all 6 star, their super attacks would do 40 hits per super attack. Well, you pair that with all the sparks and then maybe some spheres to drop more heart crystals, they're all getting filled up before they even finish counting all the heart crystals that you really got from that attack. So it's not something that I see being a prominent issue, not in the near future or even the far future. But again, once we do get into the late stages of the game, like Summoner's Arc and more primarily the Omni era, then yes, that might be something we have to reconsider just partially, but ultimately I think we'll be still safe and sound because of all the previous mentioned items, abilities, and ways that we have to boost recovery.
To add on to that, don't think about the recovery reduction as just like a nerf to recovery itself. Think about it as more of a balancing tool for us to change the meta of the game and rebalance the types themselves. We don't need Oracle as the one type that no one wants to see. We can actually balance it around and have all types be usable in the game without the fear of, oh no, what if I pull like that unit with my limited gems as an Oracle? And what if I don't have like the Rex Frog yet or whatever else there is?
And that's a good point too. Rex dominated the meta almost when it came to the late game stage of the game. If you didn't have Rex or Breaker, it was kind of considered you were just having like a troll pick, or your squad wasn't as min-max as it could have been. Those are some of the things that we want to change, especially when looking at like changes to mitigation, for example. Guardian would have a little bit more of a mitigation effect as a baseline because it's the Guardian type. You're already pre-typed for guarding and mitigation. Whereas Recovery, you're already preconditioned, or sorry, as an Oracle, you're already preconditioned to have a higher recovery stat. Just as a Breaker, you're preconditioned to have higher attack, higher crit, and stuff like that. Anima, you're preconditioned to have higher HP stats. Lord, perfect baseline. Everything's on equal footing. Rex, however, is where everything on Lord gets all brought up to the same scale. We still want to have Rex at some point in the game. It probably won't ever come very early on stage of the game just because of how strong it is. But as we get into Omni era and we start to say, okay guys, we're ready to kind of conclude with the Recoded project, we think it's at a stable enough point now to where even with all of our balance changes and everything that we have implemented, now we can safely say, even if we add Rex, it's not going to be too much of a detriment to either the new player experience or the late game player experience. Whereas, just as Afterlife said, every typing will now be officially on equal footing. There will not be one best typing.
Alright, next question is from Drag. Will new collab characters come with Vortex Dungeon storylines?
That is something I would like to do, personally. If anybody is familiar with the Brave Frontier artist, Vayrisian, I believe that's how you say it correctly, Vayrisian. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. They have a story based around Alia and Narza, which is based off of the Phantom of the Mask. I believe that's the play that's called. So something like that we would want to include, and similarly give them their own cutscene experience to where they could format their own story, explain their units in whichever way they feel is best. That way, not only can the community have that sense of collaboration like we had before with previous ones, but also add more value to those new collaboration characters, making them feel more impactful in your journeys to go forward. As far as how many we plan on doing, that still remains to be determined. We have reached out to a couple folks that are interested in that idea, and possibly even doing maybe a grand quest in the future. As far as, again, when that's all going to happen though, is far to be decided, but it is something that is, again, on the table. It's on the table back there, I promise.
Next question is from Endosalt. How would unit type stat boosts work now? In the wiki it was stated that Anima, Breaker, Guardian, and Oracle gain 5 to 10 HP, 1 to 3 attack and defense, 2 to 4 recovery bonus stats per level respectively. That will be rebalanced, and is the randomness factor removed or become a fixed value?
We don't have any changes planned on that yet, but Afterlife, if you'd like to give a little insight on that.
Yeah, sure. We talked about it before because Neily actually brought it up once. That's something that we also can use to balance the units again and the types. For example, with the recovery nerf, the few values that we get as an increase in recovery are actually more impactful than before. We can also change things up totally. We can remove the downside of it. We can actually adjust the values on the fly. We can have percentual increases instead of base value increases, which would calculate differently into the whole boost effect from spheres and leader skills and brave burst effects, etc. This is more of a balancing thing for us to decide later on, and probably do a poll with the community as well if we want to have randomness in the game. Especially since we're a gacha game, a certain degree of randomness usually helps, because then you have a more satisfactory feeling of pulling a good unit with good level ups. Yeah, basically this is more of a long-term decision that we need to do. How are we going to implement this? What do other people want to see in the game? Do you want it to be more stable or more, influenced by a bit of RNG?
And again, this is all something that will ultimately be discussed amongst the team, and then once we have a definitive idea of what steps we'd like to approach, then it will be up to the community to decide what steps we take going forward after that.
Our next question is from Kaki on YouTube. I found out about this project only a week or two ago, but I wanted to ask, when you guys inevitably release I Believe in Y'all, will the game still need to connect the servers?
The game will not still need to connect to servers in the sense of if we do an offline port, because offline you'll be able to run an EXE locally on your system of choice, of course being PC, or phone if we are able to have the offline EXE ported over to there. As far as managing the online services, everything will be online to start. That is our initial scope with the project, because we do want to continue having major online factors like arena and raid and sending out friend requests, and eventually even guilds. We've discussed about maybe having guilds into the game much earlier than before, just for the factor of rebuilding that community much stronger, much tighter, much faster. Whereas arena and raid, we think we can maybe push them off just a little bit farther down our development cycle. But online capability is something that we want to try to have be the foremost in our launch for 1.0. As far as how we're going to be handling things like servers and whatnot and what players can expect, we're going to have 2, possibly 3 servers. We're going to have the main server, which is what everybody will be playing on, will be considered the live server. Then we'll have a second server, which will be the PTR public test realm, or anything for our betas or alphas, whether that's, we just introduced a new grand quest and we need player feedback, or we need some testing when introducing a new piece of content, like a new map, for example, or a new boss, a new trial, like if we were to add Trial Maxwell, trial number 3, that would likely hit the PTR first. Once we did some balance changes to make sure that everything's all good to go on that, then that would get moved over into the live server. And finally, there'd be the backup server, which would be making sure that in case this one fails, this one's going to still be 100%. So just in case we have an outage for whatever reason, servers go down, players are worried about their account data being lost. At most, the worst that would ever happen is we have to roll back the server 24 hours. That is the worst case scenario. And that is if ultimately the cloud server doesn't have a save of the game that got caught within that last 4, 8, 12, 16 hour cycle. Chances are though, that won't be an issue, because we're going to have the cloud server constantly retrieving data from the live server, to where in the event of a crash or something of that nature, everybody's account data is all saved. You won't have to be set back too terribly far in the event of something like that, or at all. This might be, we need an hour or 2 for downtime for maintenance, or 4 hours, whichever the time slot is for that. So server priority is going to be something that we want to make sure is 100% before we consider ourselves 1.0, because again, that will be the foundation that leads us into future generations.
All right, next question from Archangel Phoenix. Here's an interesting question from my perspective. Before Brave Frontier shut down, I saw that certain units had alternate artwork. Will more units get alternate artwork and animations?
Alternate animation, I'm not too sure about that just yet. That ultimately comes down to something that's really to do with the art team more than anything else. So if we have the artist available to do that, then it's something we could look into. As far as having more alternate arts, for example, there are a few key things that we could look at, for example, being community-made content, of course. No guarantees or confirmations on anything like that happening right now, but we have reached out to a couple artists on ideas of personal renditions of certain characters to see what would they look like in a different timeline or a different story. They're just like how with Omnis, a what if factor for what if this unit fell through a different portal, or what if they met so and so instead of they and they, right? So there's a lot of different factors to include with that. Of course, we still want it to be faithful to the original game, to the point where even if Gumi or Alim decided that they wanted to push this into the main game, it would feel like it is something that is official. So no alternate like stick doodle arts or anything like that.
All right, it's been an hour. We have 5 questions left.
We can do the last 5.
All right.
We can do the last
Next
5.
question is from Crazy Gamer. Is there any content that has been lost and won't be included in Recoded?
The only content I know for a fact is lost right now, which is something we're trying to slowly piece back together, which I don't think is anything too heavily of a loss. I think it's more so just like the translation data and stuff like that. Is things from the Brave Frontier Korean server, which that got shut down pretty much after the first year because everything just got primarily focused onto the Japanese and the EU versions of the game. So, from my knowledge, that's the only piece of Brave Frontier history that we are missing. And even then, it's very, very minimal what we're actually missing. Again, primarily just like localization text, which with the help of the community, we can get that solved and fixed in no time.
All right, next question is from Super Saiyan Blue Myron. I don't know, I'm not sure I understand this one, but can you allow us summoners to create a weapon, at least using other units' weapons?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time.
Can you allow us summoner to create a weapon or at least using other units' weapons?
I assume that's regarding the third arc, the Summoner's arc.
Yes.
Talking about using like summonable characters' weapons as a weapon for the summoner, which that does sound like something that would be fun to do when we get there, of course. And still, I mean, it'd be years away from when we get to the third arc, but it doesn't sound like anything that would be impossible for us to do. It'd be something we discuss on if we want to do or not, if we can fit it into whatever sort of schedule we have at the time. So I wouldn't give a definitive answer on it, but it definitely is a fun idea, and I myself would be totally down.
I'm sure you would love to give your own character Douglas's gun, right, Cass?
Exactly.
So, you heard it here first from the creators. Afterlife, what are your thoughts? Would you want to have your own custom weapon?
Obviously, yes.
Obviously, right? It does sound fun. So, again,
Yeah.
ultimately, all this comes down to is, again, our art team. If we have the dedicated artists to make that happen, then we can actually discuss the possibilities of going through with that in a future update. So, this is a call out to all artists. If you are a pixel artist and you believe that you could share your talents with the Recoded team, go down below. Click on the link. Apply for a role in the Recoded team. Come join us and help make Recoded a reality.
Alright, we have 2 questions that are pretty similar that I can answer.
Okay.
One question from Eljon, or Elyon, is the original OST music of Brave Frontier is it going to be there, or are you guys going to change it because of the copyright? We are not going to change the music. First of all, because I spent a lot of time making it sound good.
Exactly.
spent a lot of time cutting it and making it loop correctly. Also, it's incredibly nostalgic, so it would be a very big mistake to just change the music like that. The only thing we will add as an optional thing would be Afterlife's tracks. However, it is optional.
Faceless.
Or faceless tracks. My bad. Faceless tracks that we showed during the 2024 Christmas event, Christmas video, update video. But apart from that, no, the music is not going to change. And when it comes to copyright, when it comes to the copyright question, like we are already using pretty much all the assets from the original game that we do not own. So using music as additionally is not really necessarily something that is going to be of concern, because if we can't use the music, we can't use anything else. Then the question from AJVP again. I think copyright is still applicable even if you don't make money out of it, out of the copyrighted content. You're right. Yes, copyright is still applicable even though if you don't make money from the copyrighted content. However, it is only up to the IP owner to decide what to do with that situation. If you use copyrighted content, cops are not automatically dispatched to your doorstep. The only thing that can happen is the original IP owner decides if, do I want to send a DMCA or do I want to ignore the situation? They are completely in control of that, and if so, Alim and Gumi are completely in control of if they want to take down the project or not. If they decide to ignore it, we will not get arrested for it. You are not automatically put under a warrant if you use copyrighted content. It's up to the original IP owner to decide if they want to ignore it or not, which is what we are hoping for happens with Gumi and Alim, that we don't get the DMCA. However, yes, copyright still applies if you don't make money off of IP that you don't own. However, if you make money off an IP you don't own, it dramatically, exponentially increases the chance of you getting a DMCA because there is now money involved. And large companies really like money, and they don't like their IP being used to get money. So that's when the chances for DMCA is exponentially increased. So that's why we do not we're not trying to make money off of it. We're trying to avoid any kind of donation for this specific project. The only way we'd recommend you to help financially is to support the original game, the original Alim and Gumi company, to still show an interest in Brave Frontier, to show them that there's still a fan base out here and there's still an interest to make or release a good game. And or if you want to support the project's members individually in their own individual projects, just not under the pretense of helping them for Recoded. For example, I have a YouTube channel, Neil has a Twitch, and I don't know, the coders have their own also individual projects. I think you can help them individually under financially. For example, like if, for example, Afterlife had a Patreon for a specific coding project, that would be acceptable to fund that because it's their own project. But funding Brave Frontier Recoded needs to not happen for this exact reason.
I think Jocab explained that absolutely beautifully. I do want to add one extra point though, talking about their newest releases. If anybody's not aware, Brave Frontier Versus is going to be coming out in, I believe, a week. I think October 22nd is the release date for that. A lot of the community is very against the idea of NFT and blockchains and any sort of crypto involvement with Brave Frontier. We do share the same sentiment. However, as Jocab stated, if we don't show our support for the original creators in any sort of means, although blockchain, crypto, and all those things are way, way more popular in Japan, that's why they're going through and doing those things in Japan. It's a very, very popular thing in Japan to have blockchain games, to have crypto, to have all these things integrated into your games through a Web3 format. However, that hasn't caught over into the States yet, or the rest of the world. Granted, everybody has their own thoughts and opinions, but we all do share one opinion, that we all love Brave Frontier, and we all want to see it succeed no matter what the risk is, right? So, even though we may disagree on some things in terms of their own developments, in terms of their approach towards a new Brave Frontier game, ultimately, we have to be happy that they're still making Brave Frontier as a whole. Because without that, Brave Frontier would have officially been gone and not even in anybody's thoughts or topics since 2022. Or the only thought that would be left is the Recoded project, which granted, we are all super, super thankful for and having you all here, but nothing would speak more volume than having the original creators still supporting and going on their own path, to where then in turn, maybe we on the Recoded team can shine through in some way to where we can eventually receive their blessing.
To add to that, there's a lot of people asking if we want to make our own game if we get a DMCA. I think it's a very interesting question. I think it's definitely would be a cool thing, not to get DMCA, but to make our own.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too cool.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too cool. But the way we see it, there's cons and pros for any situation. If we continue Recoded, we can never have microtransactions. We can never be funded. But we will have the original assets for Brave Frontier, which are very beloved. If we do get DMCA'd, the pros would be we now own all the assets that we're making. We now own all the game that we're making, and funding will now be accessible. However, it won't be Brave Frontier. It's gonna be a spiritual successor. It's just not gonna be the original thing.
So rather than it being called Brave Frontier, we may call it like Heroes of Exordia or something like that. Just a random name, just throw in there, right? So, as mentioned before, we don't own the assets to Brave Frontier, but because we're not reverse engineering the original code from 2013, and we're starting from scratch in Godot engine, we own the code. So no matter what happens legally, they can't come after us and say, we need your code because that's infringing on stuff that you used from our concept. That can't happen. It's all made locally here. It has anything to do with prior Brave Frontier coding or history. However, there are some projects that are brewing up that do introduce this as an element. As far as if their projects are under any sort of watchful eye from Gumi, unlikely. Why I think that is because we are one of the most prominent Brave Frontier projects, so I feel like if anybody was going to be getting shut down first, chances are it would probably be us. However, though, they are going through and making such steps to where it is a faithful recreation of Brave Frontier. Exactly the same code, almost exactly the same everything, just with minor exceptions of having to bypass a few things. So, if you do go into the Discord server, or if you're not already a part of the Discord server, discord.gg/recoded. You can join into our workshop channel, and you can scroll around, find a couple messages from other users in the community that are doing exactly that. We have Dreamo, who is making their own version of Brave Frontier called BF Remake, and then we have another group called Decomp Frontier, which is decompiling all the original Brave Frontier code and assets to where it is a faithful recreation of the mobile port as we once had. So if you are interested in those projects as well, I've already gone through and investigated and talked to all the members on those teams. I love their passion. We all share the same interest of reuniting in Grand Gaia together one day. So as much support as you guys are giving us, please go through and give them your support as well, because we're all in this together at the end of the day. We're all summoners, and we all want to get back to Grand Gaia as soon as we can.
Alright, we got one more question. Last question.
Okay.
From Endersoul. A question about potential buff reworks in the future. Would the ignore defense buff stay as it is? X% chance to completely ignore enemy defense? Or will it be reworked to something like attacks ignore X% of enemy defense? And if possible, can you tell us more about which other effects may get changed/reworked?
That is a good one. We'll have to get back to you on that one as far as ignoring defense goes, because that is something that is going to eventually fall in line with when we discuss changes to mitigation. As far as changing other buffs around and stuff like that, The only thing I think we vaguely talked about as far as having changes goes is extra action abilities and recasting, which those are, again, very, very far into the future. Those are 7-star and Omni exclusive abilities. It's not something we see being a major problem right now, or something that we have to even think about right now because of how far it is out in the scope. As far as changing other abilities goes, there's nothing we have currently at the moment that we're looking at making any major tweaks or fine-tuning that. For the original life of Brave Frontier, just talking about 2013, maybe a little bit of 2014, nothing was really too out of place in terms of balancing, except for recovery. That was the only thing that we looked at and was like, okay, of everything that's of the original Brave Frontier game, what's something that we could change that would make it more impactful to the players and more beneficial in feeling that reward and sense of accomplishment in completing Mistral, completing your battle against the Juggernaut, your battle against Demon Abaddon, your battle against Creator Maxwell, right? None of those things will really need any changes right now, so it's not something we're going to make any, if at all, changes. The only other change that we did make, which is more so of a benefit to the player, is back in, I believe it was update 13, which was the Spoils of Battle. We made a change where rather than the Zell and Karma being capped out on a unit, it is now endless. So if you want to farm 1,000,000 coins off of the same unit in a dungeon, you can do that. But it all comes down to chance. So Spoils of Battle, every unit will now have a 50% chance to drop Zell or Karma, regardless of the limit. If you exceed that limit, however, so let's say through having both a Zell Knight as your leader, a Zell Knight as a friend, and then you have all these extra options with the spheres and L gifts to give you, let's say, 140% drop rate chance on Zell and Karma. That means for every hit that you land, you're guaranteed to get at least one Zell or one Karma. And I'm going to the back room. You guys scared me. So, jeez. So yeah, one hit for each hit. Jeez, finger controls don't want to work. There we go. Jesus, I'll get better at this. Trust me. So every hit, since you have that 100%, guarantees if you have 40 hits, you're getting 40 pieces of Zell. How much each piece of Zell is worth will really come down to where you're at in terms of the story or what dungeon you're doing. So just for simplicity, let's just say it's all worth 1 Zell. Now, once you exceed that drop rate of 100%, well, once you hit 100%, nothing else would really happen afterwards. You hit 100%. That's it. In Recoded, we're going to change that. Now, if you exceed your drop rate of 100%, and now it's at 140%, now you'll have your guaranteed 1 per hit. On top of that, you'll also have an additional 40% chance for a second Zell or Karma to drop in that same hit. So those are the only 2 major balance changes that are coming to Recoded that we expect to be something that starts off in the very beginning. And then our next major changes would be, as Kaz mentioned, the clarity for text descriptions in spheres, maybe a little bit of a rework to where some spheres come in later on in the game's life cycle rather than earlier on due to just balancing and not breaking the game too early. Guardian Cloak and Aegis Cloak is a very prominent example of that. If you know, you know. Other than that, mitigation, that's really the only other change that we have on the table that we're going to be having to very, very heavily look at across not just the early era of Brave Frontier, but all of Brave Frontier to figure out what's going to be the best values to have to not essentially got what we had towards the end of the life cycle where it was 100% mitigation plus 50% mitigation plus 15% mitigation from elements plus 50% mitigation when you guard and so on and so forth. Oh, but we're still not done yet because you have mitigation from your normal Brave Burst, then you have mitigation from your extra skill, your mitigation from your Super Brave Burst, your mitigation from your Ultra Brave Burst, your mitigation from your Dual Brave Burst. You see how crazy everything's getting? This is the things that we have to go through and address, and when we do finally get to that time, we'll let the community know of these changes, and then we'll go through and have that feedback discussion of what do we feel like is going to be the best overall for Recoded.
All right, it's been an hour and 20 minutes. I don't know if you want to take more questions or if you want to end here.
We'll take. We'll do up to 10 more minutes. We'll do two or three more questions.
All right, next question is from Rafael Carrasco. Would there be any voice actors for the main story and maybe side bosses, ones that become playable units? If not, then that's fine since your team are very busy.
Afterlife, I know you're excited about this one. Why don't you answer that for us?
For base things like bosses or like other characters, it's probably a good thing to not have them voice acted. So you have your own image of how those characters are going to look like, how they sound like, what character they are, how are they speaking. That's things that you guys need to actually do like in your own imagination. With other gameplay features like an arena announcer or other things like that, we can actually voice act those things. And I even once put out a demo of a arena voice actor. But yeah. So more of speaker voices where you don't have a face to see. We can voice act those things, but as soon as we have an actual face in front of you, you probably should just imagine the voice yourself.
All right. We have another question from Mr. Mech. If we end up having to make unique units fully, will we have to also change unit details, their functions?
Taz, you want to answer this one?
Sorry, could you repeat the question one more time? I cut out a little.
If we end up having to make unique units fully, will we have to also change unit details or their functions?
Well, no, we wouldn't, because I did actually see a question in the chat about if that was covered by copyright laws and stuff, and no, the unit information in-game would not be, their brave first, the buffs they give, the attacks they do, and all that, that's not covered by copyright, so we wouldn't have to change these units and get rid of their kits entirely. That's the main reason why we want to make sure we can have either custom units or a way to replace these collaboration characters and whatnot that we're missing out on. We keep their same kits, their same skill sets and everything, put them on their own character. That way we can still have the impact that they gave to the original Brave Frontier in our version without just tossing out their kits entirely. Cause was it Legata Blue Summers? Was that his name?
Yep, Legata Blue Summers, the infamous
Yeah,
dark unit.
You insanely meta-defining character. And of course, maybe adjustments will have to be made for some characters that are a little too crazy, but kits like that, we wouldn't just want to get rid of them entirely and just act like they never existed in the first place. Our goal is to not throw out any content that we can keep and to not leave behind anything that we can, because this is meant to be a faithful recreation from the ground up.
And to add on to that as well, speaking of Legata Blue Summers, we do want to make sure that when going through and building your squads, that you're not limited by just what is the current meta. Chances are, once you get into Brave Frontier, because of all the gems and other resources that we're going to be giving to the player, you're going to have other heroes from past stories, from past events and stuff, that will be viable in modern, updated content that does get added to the game. A prominent example of this with Legata Blue Summers was, if you do not have him as a unit for your Dark type squad, automatically, by default, doesn't matter what other units you add in, your Dark type is now automatically your weakest element because you don't have Legata Blue Summers. Why is that? Because he was the only Dark type unit to ever have an extra action. Every other type, there's always at least 1, 2, or maybe even 3 characters. But for Dark type, there's only 1. So, in Recoded, this is where something like the EU exclusive units like Dark Zell Knight, for example, maybe sharing Legata Blue Summers kit and having that extra action as part of one of his abilities. Or we incorporate that into a later stage hero, maybe like Luro, for example. He would have extra action on his ultimate, while changing some abilities around to still keep it balanced, of course, but to not have it to where it's if I don't have this character, I can't do anything else. We don't want that to be the case anymore. We want squad building and diversity to be much, much more bountiful than it was before. That means having mono elemental squads and, more famously, rainbow squads.
All right. We have a last question.
All right.
I'm asking.
Oh yeah.
Who's asking the last question? Who's asking the last question?
Who's the last question? Get it in, guys. Get it in. My headset's got 20% left, so this is going to be it.
Will Douglas get an Omni? Oh, that's
Any
such a
info
good
on
question.
the timeline of daily quests, seasonal vortex arena quests, Randall Green achievement thing, etc.? Will they be added basically in accordance to the original timeline of the game? My ADHD ass really loved all the different ways of feeling like I was progressing with all the different systems by the end of the game's life cycle.
It's funny because I also have ADHD, so I totally get that. Let me just review that one more time. Info and timeline for daily quests, seasonal vortex arena. So for that specifically, yes. We don't have any info publicly available right now, but what we have discussed is eventually come 2026, 2027, depending on which year we decide to reveal this update, there will be an update titled the yearly cycle, which will be going through all content of that nature. So we'll be starting from January 1st, what content players can expect to be encountering inside the Vortex. And as we go through the timeline, going through February, March, December, into the next year, you'll see every event, every date, every time, anything that you can get from the dungeon, everything. You guys will have all that information at the absolute latest, 2027. As far as things like merit and all that goes, we will also be sharing more things on that as well, like our dailies, weeklies, and monthlies. That's something that I think is going to be very exciting for the community to keep that loop play factor of, as you said, like you're achieving much more, you're gaining a lot more resources than you normally would because of your expendable energy that you'll soon have, now that the energy cost is going to be 1 minute instead of 3 minutes to recharge. So I think I think it's going to be a very, very exciting update. There's going to be a lot to go through, of course, because if you're at all familiar with how many events are in Brave Frontier, at least 50 plus, and that's being light on how many events there are. So we have to be very cautious. We have to be very diligent on making sure that no event crosses over into the next event, because we don't want to have a repeat of the end of the game's life cycle where you go into the Vortex and you just have endless amounts of content to do. Like it's overwhelming how much content there is. And there's a term for that. It's called choice fatigue. And that's something that a lot of newer players got hit with super, super hard. Because when you have all these choices available, well, where do you start? You gotta eliminate that. You want everybody to be starting on the quest first, then working your way up the story. Eventually, okay, let's sprinkle into the Vortex a little bit. As you complete more story content, more Vortex content may come out, like the Chronicle missions, for example. But on top of that, not having 20, 30, 40 dungeons all readily available all year round will not only add a little bit more incentive to complete those dungeons, but will also add more rarity and value to having those characters in your squad or in your inventories as well. Because now it's not just, oh, Battle Maiden Vanilla, I don't have her, let me just go get her real quick. Not anymore. Battle Maidens may be coming out in, let's just say, June. So if you missed them out from getting them in June of 2026, then unfortunately, you're going to have to wait until next year, June 2027, to get them. But you'll never have to worry about FOMO, because me personally, I hate it. I hate FOMO more than anything else in this world. I think is the biggest leech in the gaming industry nowadays. So that will not be a thing. Every unit will be acquirable in some way, some form, or some fashion at some date at some certain time. So for everybody that is a completionist, you will have your goals of being to 100% Brave Frontier. I promise you that.
Yeah, baby.
Oh man.
I am a completionist.
All right.
That was it for the questions. I'm out of questions.
All right, perfect. That wrapped it up. Perfect timing. All right. That's going to be it for this Q&A. Thank you again, Summoners. Everybody that came in the Discord Event Bazaar. Everybody that came in on the YouTube stream. I'm glad we got YouTube worked out and figured out this time around, even with doing a little bit of like extra features in VR chat and whatnot. Maybe doing this again in a future update, future Q&As. Not too sure yet. I think it was fun. If you guys liked it, let me know. Otherwise, that's going to be it for the Q&A. Thank you again for everybody that was able to come out today. Thank you, Jocab. Thank you, Afterlife. Thank you, Kaz. The community appreciates your time, and just as much as I do. Thank you all so much for your support and for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. Alright, and without further ado, that's going to be it, everybody. We will see you in the next update. I don't know if we're going to do a November Q&A because we're going to be cooking pretty hard for the December update. We're gonna have a little bit of discussion with Afterlife. We're gonna have a lot of things with Jocab in the editing room, and we're gonna have to start introducing you to some new members on the team as well. We've been talking about refactoring the code for over a year now. It's refactored, and we have some new coders on the team. Who are they? Time to learn about them in update 27. Playtest possibilities. Thank you again, everybody, for your support. I will see you all in the next update. Bye-bye. Stuff, guys. Good stuff.